Hi, I'm Marie Hopkinson. I'm a Chinese medicine practitioner. Welcome back to the Chinese Medicine Podcast. Today, we're going to be answering some subscribers' questions. So you might have recently put a question. Now, in the last few days, I've been bombarded by questions, which is great. I love the questions. But please be patient if you've asked something, I don't answer you straight away. I'm doing my best to get to people's questions. And sometimes I'd rather answer them in a video, so that's what we're going to do today. So we've got questions about irritable bowel syndrome, gastroesophageal reflux disease, GERD syndrome, a GERD sufferer who wants to ask some questions about that. Another question about his body contains heat and he wants to eat more cooling foods. Is that okay? A couple of questions about dampness. Someone wants to know about prebiotics as probiotic capsules, as a treatment for dampness. And so we're going to cover a few different things, and some of these are quite detailed in their needed response. So have a cup of tea, relax, and here we go, answering subscribers' questions. So I'm going to attempt to answer some people's questions. Please excuse the noise if you can hear that shushing back and forward sort of sound. It's actually storming where I am now. It's a bit of a pour down of rain in the summertime. Sunny old Perth, a bit of a summer storm. It's very humid and very hot. Still 30 degrees and it's raining. But anyway, nevertheless, let's get on with it. So I'm going to read some of the questions that we've got from the subscribers on the YouTube channel recently. Rex says, I saw some lists on Google as to which foods are dampening and which foods to avoid that. I think he means avoid in that. I saw barley, shrimp, celery, etc. And I thought the reason they are less dampening is because they are easy to digest. However, that's not the case, and I fail to understand what makes a food not dampening. Is it the pH scale? Now, this is a really good question. What makes a food not dampening or more dampening? So I said to him in the response, I think, to see if there was some. I think I may have answered this in a previous video, but I'll answer it again because sometimes it's not like there's one answer. There might be lots of ways to answer it. So in general, our body likes that warm, cooked and moist diet, right? So it likes that. And so anything that goes with that is helpful to our body, and that generates an environment that it repels damp. So what is dampness? It's that bogging up of the spleen, the earth element. It's that bogging up with too much water and not enough yang or warmth or heat to kind of digest that water, to transform that water that's there. So if you think of it like that, foods that tend to be more boggy, more marsh-like, denser, richer, creamier foods tend to be more dampening, and foods that are lighter, so not necessarily easier. Now some foods that are dense and rich are very hard to digest, like they place more strain on your body. Like I think rich creamy sauces are heavier. Like when you eat it, you literally feel that heaviness in your stomach, in your digestive. Some people just feel bloated, they feel heavier, and so that might be something to consider as part of understanding it. Now, everything in Chinese medicine is on a scale. It's not like this food's terrible and you can never have it. It's like there's always a benefit in that to somebody at some point, right? Like sugar is a good example. Like sugar is it's a herbal food, right? It's a medicinal food, I should say. It's a medicinal food in some respects. And so sugar is something that's incredibly dampening if you have a lot of it. And the problem with our diet now is it's so dampening in general. Like if you don't eat a whole foods diet, if you don't eat out of packets and all that, and we've been through that on this channel before. So to answer your question, Rex, about this specific question, it's not necessarily the pH scale, although typically more alkaline foods and less acidic foods generally. Like I can't say it's exactly that, but that would be an interesting correlation to make. Like that, I mean, it is an interesting correlation to make. So there's no text, there's no people that have written about that and said, oh, all alkaline foods are not dampening. And again, it's got to do with how you process that food in terms of how you cook it. So cooking foods makes them easier to digest and makes them better for our body. So it helps our earth element, helps the spleen to do its job, the spleen and stomach. But if you start off with a very heavy, rich, dense food and you cook it, it still doesn't make it better for you. It's just a cooked, heavy, rich, dense food. So like if you cook a carrot, it makes it easier for the spleen and stomach to digest. If you cook cheese, like you melt cheese, it doesn't make it any less dampening, right? So if you have a lot of raw, that can be very dampening in the body as well, because that raw, like if you have a lot of raw juices, raw carrots, that kind of stuff, like anything, a lot of raw, then that creates a very cold environment. So the key to getting rid of dampness, or treating dampness, or managing damp, I should say, in your body really, is going towards that mostly warm cooked and moist diet, keeping to foods that we would say are clear, bland diet. So that would be the key thing. The clear, bland diet is a less dampening diet. Literally clear, like not cloudy food. So cheese is a cloudy food, milk is a cloudy food. When you do juices and they're thick and rich and dense, and you've put lots and lots of veggies in there and lots of things, they're rich, they're more cloudy, right? So that concentrated nutrition is a cloudy thing. So things with flour in it is a cloudy thing. Where things that are clear, like if you make a bone broth, for instance, you've got the fat on top that will come out, but then the bottom bit is that jelly is much more of a clear food than, I don't know, like a creamy sauce or something like that. So I hope that's helpful. I mean, the way to really help yourself with Chinese diet therapy is to think about things like this, and so that's really what we're trying to do. So yeah, you're right in a little bit. It is a little bit about that pH scale, but not necessarily everything that's easy to digest. You can't say everything that's easy to digest helps dampness. Things that are easy to digest help your spleen when it's weak, and often when your spleen's weak, then it gets damp, or because it gets overwhelmed with water. We can't metabolize the water. So the other aspect to getting rid of dampness is to create an environment in your digestion that's got more yang than yin, right? So more yang, more fire, more vitality, right? So more ability to digest the food. And that's where herbs come in. And that's where, if you see a herbalist, like part of our job as a herbalist is to look at your gut health. And that's primarily like, it's something that the classical system of herbs that I now practice really is mostly concerned, like when we check your pulse, if there's any obstruction in your digestive system, that will come up usually first. Like that'll be something that we'll feel in your pulse. Oh, for some reason my hair's just not playing the game today. So in the system I practice, in the herbal system with our pulse diagnosis, that's something that comes up straight away, in terms of the body saying, hey, you need to remove this obstruction. So if a person has bloated, gassy, they have pain, particularly the epigastric area, so just this area under the ribs there, like in the middle of your stomach, so in the center, that's an area that often, if that's obstructed, that'll show up in your pulse pretty obviously. And then so what would happen is we'd say, right, oh, well, this is what I'd say to the patient, right, your body's saying we need to remove that obstruction, or make sure that's flowing smoothly or clear. That's all ways that I would talk about it. Make sure that that's open, like in a way, in a Chinese medicine sense, we'd think of it as like, okay, make sure your digestive system's open so that it's able to absorb then, like if your pulse changes and you need like tonification, or you need warming up or something like that in your gut, let's say, then your digestive system is more open to receive that. It's easier to digest it. Whereas if you're already blocked, already stuck, and you put herbs in that are nourishing you, some systems of herbs actually just move through that, and the person feels really uncomfortable, but they just deal with it. That's like in Chinese herbs, the fire spirit school of Chinese herbs is all about warming and promoting your yang, but sometimes in the process of doing that, they don't necessarily go through this removing, like harmonizing or ensuring your digestive system's functioning as, openly. They just go straight for the tonification or the warming up herbs. And it's okay, like in the long term, that's the right thing to do for the patient, but in the short term, the patient can feel a bit uncomfortable in that process. And sometimes it's like that with foods, right? So if you just go straight for supplements, so often with foods, people go between, let's say, an actual food like a banana and a medicine, right? So a supplement is kind of in between there. So if you know particular vitamins are in a food and you think, oh, well, I don't want to eat that food, or I want to ensure I get a certain amount of nutrition, like Brazil nuts, for instance, selenium's really high in Brazil nuts. So if you needed selenium, you could either have a Brazil nut, or you could, I don't know, take a selenium tablet. So that supplementation is kind of in between and an actual, like, you know, a medicine where they're going to give you a drug, or some drugs are, you know, are vitamins and minerals that your body needs, right? And so before you go down that road of supplementation with your vitamins and minerals, if your digestive system's blocked and you fill it up with all these vitamins and minerals, you sometimes don't feel so great. You feel more blocked because there's so much stagnation there. Now, the only way you're going to know what's happening there is if you see a practitioner who can check your pulse and tell you what your body's asking to treat first. That's pretty much how it works with the system I do. And symptom-wise, there's certain symptoms of stagnation. Now, you might have watched some of the videos here of liver qi stagnation. That's one type of stagnation. But stagnation in your digestive system, like in your guts, would probably give you like a pokey feeling or a horrible feeling in the epigastric area, so right under your in the center under your ribs, or you might even just feel like bloated or burping or belching or something like that. Anyway, so then we've got some other questions on here. Please cover tongue diagnosis. So I will do that, and I'll do that in a separate. That was a comment on the Chinese medicine series for students that we're going to be starting. Awesome video, keep it up. Would you like to be YouTube friends? Yeah. These people constantly comment like that, and I've even commented back and then you hear nothing back from them, so I don't know what a YouTube friend is, but yeah, okay. Right, so this other guy, Wong Fei Hong, I'm sure that's not your real name, but I did comment that that's a great name because I love Wong Fei Hong. Like, if I had a boyfriend, he would be my boyfriend. Anyway, still love those Jet Li movies. Bloody hell. So he says, now this is a really interesting question, and I think this might warrant its own little video, but I know that for me, my body contains more heat, he puts it in these inverted comments, and I try to consume food or beverages that tend to have a cooling effect. I also suffer with acne, so I've been trying a lot of different remedies and foods. Now, this is a really interesting topic, right? Now, so the heat in Chinese medicine. Since I've studied the classical style of Chinese medicine, the way that we look at your body is a lot different to the let's say, the post-1950s kind of TCM style, which is like, you know, I don't want to go back into the stock standard TCM style that's practiced now sees your body, these pathogenic aspects a little bit differently. So back when I studied Chinese medicine, we learned about heat. And if a patient has these symptoms, like if they had a sore throat, if they get redness, if they get, you know, and this is stuff that is still taught in schools, and it's something that I teach in schools. I just tell students, look, it's one system, it's one style of Chinese medicine. So there are different ways of looking at how this works, even within Chinese medicine, which can make it more complicated for people. And so it does make sense in one way. It is a heat of sorts, but where is that heat coming from? So in the classical sense of Chinese medicine, they'd say, well, that heat is your own body's yang. It's not like some external heat. And so in a way, it doesn't change much because it's still a kind of a heat, but it does change a lot when you talk about treating it, especially with herbs. Because when you treat it with herbs and foods in a TCM way, you're using all these cooling foods or cooling herbs, thinking that, okay, this person is, in a relative sense, we want to know, are they excess or deficient? Right now, most patients are a bit of both. They're not just all one. But in a way, like, so if they just had heat in TCM, they'd be sure heat, like excess heat. So they have acne, let's say. Especially for an adult, not so much a teenager. Then that's not necessarily like, okay, let's get some cooling herbs and cool that down. So that, and the bummer about it is that often those herbs do work for a temporary fix. It's kind of like people that take antibiotics for acne. Antibiotics are very cold. They cool the fuckery out of your digestive system. They cool your digestive system down. They cool your gut down, and that's how they damage your gut health, right? So they damage your your intestinal, like your bacterial, what do you call it, the gut flora. That's what I'm trying to think of. And so what I'm getting at is Chinese herbs, they don't necessarily have that much of a detrimental effect in that way, but that cooling effect is a kind of temporary thing. So as soon as the patient stops taking those cooling herbs, if their diet still is heating or their lifestyle still causing that heat to happen, then it just comes back again. And so they have to kind of stay on those herbs. Now, over a long period of time, in a classical Chinese medicine sense, we would think that those cooling herbs are over time damaging your yang. They're killing your yang. So it's just a completely different way of thinking about treating it. So if you're watching this video and you might have a similar question to Wong Fei Hong about this, and you're thinking, okay, I've been told I've got heat from a TCM practitioner, and I've done the herbs and I do feel good for a while, but then it comes back. Well, going and seeing a herbalist who does classical Chinese herbal medicine, that's the difference. They will treat you with different herbs. They might even use warmer herbs. So I remember when I first started doing this system, I was like, whoa, I'm going to use like ginger on someone who's got a sore throat. Like, I was taught in the stock standard TCM way, if you've got a sore throat, don't stop taking all warming things. Don't drink ginger tea for a sore throat, right? Those days have gone now. Thank God, thankfully. But it is a difference. It is a big difference. So the way we treat it is a difference. But in one way you can see, okay, yeah, I can see how TCM can still see that it is a kind of a heat. So if you get these symptoms, yeah, they are a heat. But where's that heat coming from? It's your body's yang. It's your body's yang kind of floating up to the surface or floating up there. And why is that yang floating up? Like, because your body's weak. Strong yang can stay in a place where it's meant to stay. Weak yang floats away. And so that's a kind of a difference. So that would be my answer. So I'm not sure what his question is. He's just telling me what he's doing. He says, I know that for me, my body contains more heat, and therefore I try to consume food or beverages that tend to have a more cooling effect. And this is, unfortunately, I can't give you a proper answer without checking your pulse, really, because we don't know through just the symptoms only whether that heat, because there are, in classical Chinese herbal medicine, there are situations where people do have excess heat. There are those symptoms, but syndromes or situations. But it's not as common as TCM kind of makes it out to be, or TCM practices it like that. So your pulse will kind of inevitably tell you. And one of the things that you'd probably watch out for in a classical sense is one of the times where you would look at your tongue is if your tongue gets a really thick yellow greasy coating on it. That is a true damp heat kind of situation. Like that is in those cases, in herbs we would use much more cooling kind of herbs, and we would use those cooling herbs to kind of clear the heat, but we wouldn't keep patients on that stuff for months and months or years and years or anything like that. Like, it depends on what's going on. Then usually after that's gone away. Now, often that could be caused by diet. Like, so if someone has a lot of alcohol and they consume, like, alcohol is a heating thing. It's adding heat into your body. And at the same time, it's depleting your yang and depleting you, or you do have a really rich and greasy diet just as a one-off or a two-off kind of situation. And then you've gotten that damp heat in your digestive system. That's one of the things that could cause it. So, yeah. So my next thing, and I always say this, and I don't say this to try to say, well, I can't help you, but it is an individualized system. That's the beauty of Chinese medicine. So this channel is really to help guide people, help you on the way to find a good practitioner, and help you on the way to understand your condition and the stuff you can do for yourself. There are some things you can do for yourself, but inevitably that ultimate care has to come from the practitioner itself, like the who can check your pulse, who can see you, who can do the treatment on you. Like, there's lots of things with acupuncture and moxibustion and things like that I mean, obviously we can't do acupuncture through the internet at this stage. Okay, so that is one question. All right, now I've got another question about dampness. This is from John, and he said, can olives cure... olives are good food to cure dampness. Well, firstly, we can't really say the word cure. Well, I'd be reserved in saying the word cure, because cure kind of implies that it's completely gone. Now, I would like to be able to cure everything. I would like that. But in medicine, in any kind of form of medicine, we don't usually use that word that often, because it's a misleading word. It implies that it's gone forever and it's never going to, there's a cure, like you you know, and these are kind of things like where there's, you know, there's a virus outbreak. Is there a cure for it? Take that, and it's gone out of your body. Dampness kind of comes and goes with lifestyles. So you could take really strong, hot, warming herbs. Let's say you're on really warming your gut herbs. One of those herbs could be like ginger. So there's a formula called Legion 1, which is using like ginger and ginseng and some other herbs like baiju and stuff to kind of dry up the damp and also warm the gut. So there's 4 herbs in that formula. And so what that does is, like, that's often used for people that have had like food poisoning, and they've been from a weakness perspective of food poisoning. Let's say they're more of a deficient patient, got food poisoning, and they got really extreme diarrhea, so their body can't hold on to the fluids properly, it can't transform them, and that's a sign of damp, like a really deficient spleen or a deficient earth, and then having that like looser diarrhea kind of thing. And so someone whose gut's kind of been really ravaged by that, some kind of illness like that, that kind of a formula is basically working to warm their digestive system. I had a really interesting case where I used that formula for a person that I knew who was a homeless guy, and he was pretty strong kind of homeless, who was a pretty strong homeless person, right? So he wasn't a druggie, he wasn't a person who used he took good care of himself, I should say. Like, he was probably, I used to call him like Perth's cleanest homeless man. And so I got to know him through the food program that I was doing, and I was running this food program, and I gave him these herbs to, after he had like an incident one time where he ate some bad food. And he said to me things like, oh, you know, you just go around Perth and get food, like people who give out food for homeless. He goes, oh, sometimes I can just tell it's a little bit dodgy, right? I mean, yeah, I'm not, it's just how it is. I mean, hey, maybe if you've got a bit of a sensitive stomach and you're sick, you kind of like stick to the basics, right? So if you're on the street, you're kind of sticking to whatever you can get. Like, you're at the mercy of whatever people give you, whatever the shelters are offering of food and things like that, you know, and these kind of services. And so he would we had like a weekly food service, and he would come and get that food. And one day he came, and he wasn't feeling well, and I said, are you okay? And we just had a conversation, had a chat, and I said, look, can I check your pulse? I can give you some herbs if you want, and you know, we'll see if we can help you like that. I don't mind helping you. And he said, yeah, okay. So I checked his pulse, and he had like in my system of herbs, we would call that a Legion 1 kind of pulse or situation. So gave him that formula, and just as a granule, so it was easy for him to make. He just kind of mixed it up and with a little bit of hot water and drank it. And he got completely better from that, right? Like, so he took those herbs for probably three or 4 months, actually. So he took them regularly for like 2 or 3 weeks, and every time I'd see him, I'd just bring him some more. And then after about a month, I said, look, just keep these in your bag in case you get sick again. And, you know, it was severe. He was having to run to the toilet every time, you know, like eat something and then run to the loo or be really concerned. And so I'm telling you that story because, like, that would be a situation where there's a really clear incidence of it happening, right? So there's a clear time where he was healthy before that. Let's say he was a pretty healthy guy and never had that problem before, and then he got the food poisoning basically, because that's what he said. Oh, okay, I ate some dodgy food, and since then this has happened. And when I saw him, it had only been happening for 2 or 3 days. So that's a case where you'd have dampness from a one-off kind of situation, and then maybe because your body's weak or unhealthy, or it's unable to, like, it just takes time to recover, and it could take a few weeks to recover from a very severe food poisoning incident. Like, so let's say someone has food poisoning and they're vomiting, and they need to go to the hospital and get an IV drip and that sort of stuff, and they can't keep any food down, like really severe. That can really ravage your gut health for quite a while, and you can just feel like you can't get back to 100% eating normal foods, you know. So what I'm getting at is a patient like that or a person like that might need to take the herbs for a while, regularly. And then while they're on the herbs, because that's continuously warming, so that Lidl wine formula is like a warming formula, and it kind of warms the gut. Now that's not I don't want to say the name of the formula for people to watch this and think, oh, I'll just go down and get some of that Lidl one, because it's not the right formula for every person. Like you need to have the right pulse for it, and you need to have the right practitioner. You need to have a practitioner to tell you that's the formula for you, right? So yeah, there are other kinds of warming herbs that we would use, like different actual herbs or different formulas. Or some people don't need the warming herbs, and if they didn't need that and they needed to be purged, then like taking that warming formula is going to make you feel a lot worse. So Chinese herbs work really well when they're prescribed properly by a practitioner who knows what they're doing. But when they're not, like they can make you heaps worse. So just want to make sure people know that you know, it's not something you can just go down to Chinatown and buy your own herbs and fiddle-faddle around with it. Don't do that. Anyway, so what I'm getting at is if you stay on these herbs, then maybe your diet could be very varied, and you could eat a bit of foods that would aggravate you, and you'll feel okay. You won't get sick. But when you stop taking that formula, how is your life? You know, how's your digestion after that? And that would be like, okay, maybe you could say it's cured. But the word cure is we just don't use that word in medicine very much because of that reason. So I just want to sort of have a conversation about that. And so there's no one food that can cure dampness. If there was, I'd be a rich, very, very rich person. There's just not. There are herbal formulas that people could stay on, and that will keep their gut health warm enough to endure the variety of myriad of foods that might be out there. And that's why I gave you that Legion 1 case, because that was kind of this guy, like he was at the mercy of whatever food that was around. Like, you know, sometimes he'd eat really healthy and well, and sometimes he'd say, well, all that we can get is pies or pie and sauce. Good old pie and sauce in Australia. Yeah, and so so olives, and I said to him in the answer to this one just briefly, like, you need to make sure they're not oily. So if you've got a lot of oil in your food, that's a dampening thing, and that's not good for you. Like if you've already got dampness, don't add more oil to your diet. So olives without all that oil is, you know, would be okay. All right, got more questions. Is even white rice, he's put basmati or jasmine. This is this guy's Lucas. Is even white rice, basmati or jasmine more dampening than whole grain rice? Personally, white basmati rice seems much less damp than whole grain rice. Now, the answer to this question is kind of in the first bit that I did, where I said, okay, your stomach likes things that are easy to digest, and that promotes a nice environment. So what that does is the benefit of white rice to brown rice, or any kind of whole grain rice or brown rice, is that it doesn't overstrain your digestive system. So it just keeps it churning along nicely, and everything's happy. It doesn't place extra strain on it. When there's more strain on it, then it's your spleen, kind of the fire or the yang of your spleen, needs more resource. So it's drawing more resource to transform and transport the brown rice, to break it down. So it takes more energy to break it down. So therefore it's kind of wasting a bit of your energy. And that would be the answer to that. So it's not so much that it's less dampening. It's that it's easier for your digestive system, and that makes your digestive system less prone to getting damp, if that's a good answer to that question. I hope that is. We've got a couple more questions. End Time TV. What a great name for a YouTube name. End Time TV. The end is coming. How can remove wind? It's create my chest chi blocked and my throat too. So I've given you a response here. I'm not sure exactly what you're saying, and I'd like to answer you properly, but I don't know exactly. So I've said, look, I'm not sure the full context of your question. Sounds like you need to see a practitioner first. It's blocked chi in the throat and chest is probably not wind. It might be stagnant chi or a tight diaphragm pressing up into your chest. So what can happen is your diaphragm muscle gets tight, contracts, pushes up, and so people get a feeling of chest tightness and like an obstruction, and then that pushes up into their throat. Now, there is a condition in Chinese medicine called plum stone throat, or feeling as if there's a lump in your throat, and that's often an emotional thing. Not always, but people get that, like what I just did then, that sighing, right? Sighing and feel like it's a stagnant chi mixed with emotional stuff. So your liver, wood element, regulates that regularity of things moving smoothly, and when that's not moving smoothly, often people can get very easily emotional, easy angry, frustrated, depressed, sad, lots of just emotional stuff, right? And they can also get tightness kind of here in their gallbladder channel, because that relates to the wood as well. And sometimes that pushing up kind of extends into the chest and causes that blockage, and so the sort of description of it is like as if a piece of meat is stuck in the throat. So when you're swallowing, it feels as if there's something like that you're passing through, like that's stuck there, and it's not from a physical thing happening. It's because there's an emotional context to it. So the emotional stuff is that's part of that plum stone throat issue. Let's answer some more questions real quick. Okay, another guy, blessings of Allah cannot be enumerated. What another great it's a very long-winded YouTube name. So can you please give me 10 to 15 veggies or food items which are the most effective in healing a damp body? So the first part of this video will answer some of that question. So the things that help get rid of dampness is an environment that promotes the warm nature of your spleen and stomach. So let's say you do love having smoothies, put some ginger in there with the smoothies, right? Have warmness in your diet as well, so warming that yang. Now, the foods that help your earth element is ginger. That's one of the main foods. So you could cook with ginger, especially in winter time. You can put ginger with lamb, those warming, hotter kinds of meats. So there's a few ways that we treat damp in a herb sense, and you could use this in a food sense as well. So I might do a longer video on this as well, just to explain it, but you could either drain damp, like you can make someone urinate more to get rid of it, or you can transform the damp, and that's like floral kind of smell, that floral smells, but that fragrant herbs that kind of resolve damp. And you can also warm to get rid of damp. So you can like warm the yang to help make it stronger so that the damp doesn't come back. Is that pot plant example that I gave in one of my videos before. So if you overwater a pot plant, there's no drainage system for it, or the dampness kind of builds up, and then the roots just rot. So you could either put some sunshine on it, and that's kind of what ginger does in a way, like dried ginger, not the fresh ginger, but the dried ginger is kind of like warming from the inside, really making that hot and that drying. So if you put something in the oven, it dries it out. It takes all the moisture out of it. And that's what you want to do with your body, is kind of not take all the moisture out of it, but you want to get that moisture, that damp, that extra moisture, you want that out of your body. So stop eating the extra moisture foods, like not moist foods, but stop eating the dampening foods. That's the first one, right? So if you've got all those, so you need to do an inventory of what you're having rather than just try to add more foods to get rid of it. That's probably the first thing I would say. And I did that in one of my videos. Maybe that's the one you commented on. I can't remember. These are all great questions. But yeah, there's kind of, some of them have the same answer. So 10 to 15 veggies. So I'll give you a couple now, and I'll make a longer video on that later on. So one of the best veggies that people just don't know about is called kohlrabi. KHOLRHABI, something like that. I'll write it down at the bottom. It's probably spelled differently. So let's have a quick look. Let's go to Pitchford's book and look at. Now I've cooked with this heaps of times. Its neutral nature, pungent, sweet and bitter flavour, improves energy circulation, eliminates blood coagulations and stagnancies, reduces damp conditions in the body, treats indigestion and sugar imbalances. I'm just reading straight from the Pitchford book here. Used for hypoglycemia and diabetes, relieves painful and difficult urination, stops bleeding in the colon, reduces swelling of the scrotum, alleviates intoxication from drugs or alcohol. The juice is drunk as a remedy for nosebleed. So when you think about it, getting rid of damp, that makes complete sense about all those other things, because they're all edematous type of thing. So like if you've had alcohol intoxication, the way you want to get you need to get the alcohol out of your system, and that would fix the problem, right? So you want to urinate more to kind of get it out, and that's what kohlrabi kind of does. It's got that detoxification effect. Now, what you do with it is you just it's like a little root kind of bottom bit. It's the bottom of, I think it's the bottom of a celery. I'm just going to Google that.
3 hours later.
So it's basically like a root vegetable that grows underneath, and then it's got these leaves that kind of go out, and you don't really eat the leaves, you just eat the root part of the vegetable. Now, because it's a root, it's good for your spleen, your earth element. Like all the root vegetables are good like that. It's got that bitter flavour, so that helps, like bitter gets, like consolidates that damp. It like acts like a sponge, so it kind of helps soak up that damp and then like squeeze out repurpose the water and that kind of stuff and get rid of the damp like that way. And so sometimes when people have dampness, not all the time, but they often have fluid in the wrong places. So they're either urinating a lot, and they've got but they've got a lot of dryness in other areas of their body because their body can't digest the foods properly. So bitter flavoured food. So to answer your question, to answer your question, blessings of Allah, we can't. I'm just laughing. It's such a long name. Like, it's a very long name for a YouTube channel. There's not like these would be my best food. So bitter melon, it's not the greatest yet tasting food, and kohlrabi are really good for dampness. So if you can stomach taking bitter melon, go for it. Have some bitter melon. I mean, it's very commonly used in curries actually. Kohlrabi is really delicious. So you can cut it very, very thinly, and almost, it's like a radish kind of taste, but not as tart as a radish. So you could stir fry it, you can steam it. I cut it up thinly and put it in my vegetable bake. So I usually often do like a vegetable bake where I just have layers and layers of vegetables, and do it like that. So hope that's interesting to you, to get you started. And I will do a video about 10 to 15 on, I'll call it 15 vegetables for dampness. So we'll do that. All right. There's so many questions. There's heaps of questions. Can we roast vegetables in the oven instead of boiling? And this was on, what video was this on? I think he's on the dampness video again. It's hard to know because this is... Can we roast vegetables in the oven instead of boiling? And are boiled eggs okay? Yeah, so boiled eggs are great for damp or any kind of, like, just in general, boiled eggs are good because you're not adding any fat or oil to it, and you've got lots of protein. So just keep within your regular, like, don't just eat eggs for your diet. But if you're including eggs in your diet, that's good. They're healthy, right? And roasting. So when you say roasting in the oven, don't put oil on them. If you roast in the oven with oil, then you're definitely making the food more dampening. That's not really the greatest. So what I would suggest to you, similar to the case example I gave you with the Legion 1 guy, you could go off your, like, you could, if you get onto a herbal formula and it's helping your digestive system, you could probably cope with some of these slightly dampening methods of eating from time to time, and you won't have any detriment. You won't notice any symptoms. But if you really, really want to give your body a break, then try to go on to just the clear bland diet, which I talked about in the video of how to eliminate dampness, which is really that clear bland diet. So just giving your digestive system a break. And that's 3 days. It's not forever. And then you'll notice, and then be aware, okay, when I do this, what happens? When I do this, what happens? So if you just had boiled veggies and then you suddenly go and have roast veggies, okay, you might feel all right. But if then you had fried veggies, chips or something like that, then you might notice the effects of it. So the 3 days of eating the clear bland diet, and you could do that with a soup kind of based diet as well if you wanted to, it's just to reset your ability to perceive what the effects of foods have on you, and that's a good thing to do. Right, there's a lot of questions here. Another guy, Rex again. Rex says, I have a white covered tongue all over. Get this up here. So I have a white covered tongue all over, except the left side at the rear is only pink. What should I do? So I've said to him best to see an acupuncturist or a herbalist. And some Chinese medicine practitioners don't, or some systems of Chinese medicine don't really care or worry too much about your tongue. Your pulse is much more important than your tongue. So I wouldn't just go, oh, look at your tongue and think, wow, oh, I'm dying, or something's really severely wrong. Because your tongue can show stuff that's happened way in the past. Like, it doesn't show stuff in the future. It's not like a mystical Doctor Who portal of time tongue. But your tongue shows stuff that might not be relevant to your pathology right now. It's stuff that might have happened later on. So your practitioner will be able to help you weed through that information and work out, okay, what's going on now? What's your body, like your pulse is going to tell your practitioner exactly what's going on now, what needs to be treated now, and then you can kind of work back from there. Now, the tongue coating represents the dirty dregs of digestion coming up onto the tongue. So if there's no dirty dregs, there's no tongue coating of sorts, like there's no thick coating. Now it's meant to be a thin, clear to white coating, not a thick white coating. So to have no coating, we would call that peeled. That's also a pathological condition, and that's kind of a condition of dryness. So there's not enough fluid. So in TCM, they say the stomach is the origin of fluids. So you need those fluids from the stomach kind of coming up onto your tongue to coat it, to make your tongue moist, not sticky or thick kind of coated. Yep. So that brings me to another question, another comment just to make. Please make sure you're seeing a practitioner, not using YouTube as medicine, as a replacement for your medicine. Like, please do that. That this channel is meant to be helping people understand Chinese medicine, how it's used. This is an educational channel just to teach people about what can Chinese medicine do, how do we talk about the different things in your body, how is it different to Western medicine or Ayurvedic medicine or chiropractic medicine or just different kinds of medicines. How is it different to that? And what kinds of things can people do for themselves? And that's where, like I'll do my best to answer your questions, and I love hearing your questions, and I'll get to them as soon as I possibly can. So just letting you know, like I do run several businesses as well. I see patients, I teach Chinese medicine, I'm a busy person. So I like doing this channel, and I'll do my best to kind of answer them, and I will make videos about answering them because that's probably the best way for me to do that. Because then I think it benefits more people as well, and that sometimes it's like when you're teaching a class, often a question that a student has, everyone has that question, or everyone benefits when that question's asked. So that keep asking the questions, but just bear in mind that I can't answer them straight away necessarily, or I can't. If I don't get to them straight away, it doesn't mean I'm ignoring you. That's what I'm saying. Okay. Another person, I can't hear you on one of my oldest videos, like from 7 years ago. So I really apologise for that. This was who's put that? Rebel Reed. So yeah, I actually redid that video. That was on chi stagnation, and I'm really sorry. Like back then, I just didn't know what I was doing. I was sitting right in front of my SM58 microphone, and I didn't boost the audio up, and you can't go back and fix that now. So yeah, that's the case. Like old things, technology changes, and not just that, but our ability to use the technology changes. And so thank you so much for people bearing with me. There's been new videos that I've done now where I've just been not happy with the audio, but I've still put it out there anyway. It's just not the greatest. I'm doing my best to kind of purchase new equipment, and I've got a new camera now, and try to make it as easy for me to make these videos so I can do them, pump them out quickly. So I do the quality as best I can for the time that I've got, because we could get better quality, but then the audio, the editing will be like arduous and take so much longer that I won't be able to pump the videos out as quickly as I do. So that, I think they're the main questions. So there are some other ones there that I've probably answered in comments, and so please keep asking your questions. I'll keep trying to answer them. That was a bit of a that sounded like Gary V then, sorry about that. Not sorry to be Gary V, but I wasn't trying to copy him. But yeah, so please keep asking the questions. And so I'm doing a new series on this channel. So really quick little update. doing a new series that's just started. I've put out the intro, and so that'll be weekly as best as I can. I'll try to do that weekly. And we're starting with the Zung Fu, and that's for students. And then last week I just got back from Brisbane and Sydney doing interviews with practitioners. So if you like listening to me and you want to hear more of me babble or talk about stuff, or just the behind the scenes stuff, you can go onto my Instagram at Chinese Medicine Podcast. I put little bits and pieces in the stories there, so you can follow me on Instagram at Chinese Medicine Podcast. You can follow me on TikTok. I think there's 6 followers on my TikTok for Chinese Medicine Podcast right now. So there's little videos that I put there. So please go, if you're a TikToker, go and give the TikTok some love. At the moment, my nephew is the only one who loves my TikToks. He just loves hearing me say the word TikTok. TikTok, TikTok, TikTok. He loves that. So he gets really excited. So if you want to get excited about TikTok, jump on there and follow me at Chinese Medicine Podcast. I think it's Chinese Med Podcast, because I couldn't fit the whole thing in. Chinese Med Podcast at TikTok. And and Facebook as well. So if you're a practitioner or you're a student watching this and you're like, I love some of these videos, I put really shorter clips on Facebook, about 3-minute, 4-minute clips on Facebook, 1-minute clips on Instagram. Sometimes we use the IGTV, the Instagram TV, and put longer clips there. So you can share the content. So if there was something like, I loved how you did that funny video about diarrhea, you could share them with friends and family and let them all know about diarrhea or whatever is the topic of the month. And the other thing I want to say was the interviews I did with practitioners were amazing. Like I probably met with about 8 different practitioners, and we did some topics on fertility. Did a really, really interesting interview with a practitioner called Amy Forth, who is very much interested in, or invested in, her whole life seems to be invested in research of Chinese medicine and bettering the fertility field of Chinese medicine through research-based medicine. She has a really good understanding of the research that started around 2002 right up to currently. And so what we did on one of the episodes is we just talked about what is that research and how to interpret it for a regular layperson, a person who is maybe going down that journey of being wanting to have a baby, or a fertility journey, let's say, and you're like, well, what is the evidence to support the use of acupuncture along my fertility journey? What's the evidence like to support with pre and post IVF acupuncture, that kind of stuff particularly. And so that was very interesting talk. So that'll be coming out really soon. I did an interview in Brisbane with a practitioner called Andrew Orr, and we were talking about endometriosis, because he's got a very special interest in that, and how he's running like an integrative clinic portal type of thing, where he connects with lots of practitioners to help women who have endometriosis to access different support systems, different kinds of treatment systems for that. And then I also did one with a guy. Now, if you're a student and you're going to be following the student stream that I'm starting, or the student series, I interviewed a practitioner in Brisbane called Michael Brown, and he's very knowledgeable and very it was very easy to talk to. I think, not that other practitioners aren't easy to talk to, but once we got going, he was going, and so that was a very good interview. And we actually recorded 2 episodes. One particularly just for students. So he's just edited a book, a book called Channels and Points of Acupuncture, or something like that. It's a really, really interesting book. I've ordered my book on Amazon, so I can use that in my teaching as well. And that book is translating, just a different level of translation of points and stuff. And I won't spoil the surprise, but that was a really good interview, well worth talking about. But the other thing he talked about was just tips for students, how to learn, how to study Chinese medicine, how to study acupuncture and stuff. And he's a teacher in Brisbane as well at a college. And who else did I talk to? I talked to a couple of practitioners about self-care. That was a really interesting interview that we did. Talked about different aspects of fertility to 2 or 3 practitioners. So it's a really big field in Chinese medicine. There's a lot of acupuncturists and herbalists who practice fertility, who just they have a special interest in that, and they really just hone in on that field. And what was interesting is they all had different takes on things, like different, not opposite ideas, but just different things to share, which was really gold. So there's some really good stuff talking about how to help prepare yourself if you are trying to have a baby, or your partner's trying to have a baby, or you know, obviously you and your partner are trying, but what could you do as a partner supporting someone who's pregnant, that kind of stuff. So they're really, I was really happy with the trip and very excited to, I can't wait to edit those. Sit there all night and edit those videos so I can get them out to you. So they'll be coming out over the next few weeks. There'll be one every week for the next 10 weeks, and those will all be going on iTunes as well. So there's a little channel update for you. And so hopefully you've enjoyed this little Q&A. I'll try to pump this out as quick as I can. So I like to be able to answer people's questions, and I love this format of being able to talk on the camera. And maybe what we'll do in the future is do some live stream stuff. So if people are really interested in that, if we can grow the channel a bit bigger, I'll probably do some live stream. So if you're interested in doing a live stream, that's another thing. I'll have to learn how to do the technology for that. Put it in the comments below what times would suit you. I hope you're having a great week, great weekend if that's when you're watching this. And thank you so much for watching and subscribing. We're almost up to 1,000 subscribers. We're like, the other day was 888, and I was like, oh, what an auspicious number. 888. So yeah, thank you so much for subscribing. Welcome to all the new subscribers. And I know there's people out there, because I can see that there's like 60% of people who watch my videos are not subscribers. So make sure you click that subscribe button. I know who you are. You're kind of sneaking in and just getting the content, not subscribing. So make sure you click subscribe if you enjoy this, and if yeah, especially if I'm answering your questions, because this is really meant to be Q&A for subscribers, and so I really want to give you that value. And thank you so much. That's what you can do to help me, is you can just click that subscribe, click the notification bell, and everybody's happy. So have a great week and a great day, and we'll see you again on the next video.